Guess the bad review.
Yeah, guess the bad review.
We need a theme song. We need a theme song for this. Maybe like, oh god, like the circus theme, like yeah, something like that. Just something lighthearted.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
No. Nope.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kaiju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Jamalicious Jackson.
Oh boy, no, I'm gonna fight my better instincts, and I'm just gonna let that one go this week. I can't do it. I'm sorry, Travis.
Oh, man. That sounds like MC Hammer's real name.
It kind of does. What is MC Hammer's real name?
I have no idea. I would have to Google that.
Isn't it something really nerdy? Like
Stanley Kirk Burrell.
Stanley. There we go.
Yeah, Stanley.
Oh, Stanley. Oh boy, how are you today, man?
I'm doing good. You think the show's already off the rails? I mean,
no. I don't think
MC Hammer.
No, I don't think we're totally off the rails yet. We get you and I, for some odd reason, get distracted way too easily.
Yes, very, very much so. I always liken myself to a gorilla that has just has been handed a mirror for the first time. So it's like trying to figure out what this is that's in my hands now, huh? What?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, I get it. No, I get it. But yeah, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have some fun this week, I think.
Yeah. I think today's going to be a really fun episode. We do not have a news story to cover, so there's not going to be any beady to cue. But we're going to bring back a segment that I think we had a lot of fun with last time. I don't know if the listeners had a lot of fun with. And that is... Go ahead.
Guess the bad review!
Yeah, guess the bad review.
We need a theme song. We need a theme song for this. Maybe like... oh god, like the circus theme, like yeah, something like that. Just something lighthearted.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
No.
Nope. Yeah, so this time you're the one who's organized some of the bad reviews, and I'm going to be guessing the movies that they come from. So
yes, and I had some fun with this, finding all the really bad reviews. I've got some good ones here. I got some tough ones for you. I'm hoping to stump you a little bit, and I will say at least one of these is in the Toho catalog, but it's not a Godzilla movie.
Okay, so we need to break this down for people who are just tuning into the podcast for the first time.
Sure.
Whenever we're slow on news stories, we like to play little games at the beginning of the episodes before we get into the main topic. And so this is one of the games that we do. We go on to... Did you get them from Letterboxd?
I got them from everywhere, man.
Oh, okay. So we usually go through and try to find some of the lowest rated reviews or lowest score reviews that we can find, and for movies that generally are not considered bad movies, but and we try to find some of the funny ones and read them to each other and see if the other can guess what movie we are talking about. Now, the last time around, I did just Godzilla movies. So this time around, do you have a theme for them, or is it just kaiju movies in general?
Just kaiju movies in general. They are in the Toho catalog, but there's at least one that's not a Godzilla movie.
Okay. So I will see if I can guess it. So we're gonna I'm gonna hand it off to you, and you get us started on the first review.
Okay, so we're gonna start off with this this beauty that I found by way of Letterbox, and it reads like this. A whole lot of buildup for a dude dressed as a monster destroying someone's train set. 1/2 star.
Destroying a train set. What movie? I'm gonna go with. Oh, see, it's a lot of build up. So, would it be Godzilla Raids Again?
Is there a train in that one?
I don't know. I couldn't remember. It was the one that I couldn't remember the most.
No.
Maybe
That's the
train.
one where. Yeah, that's the one where he gets trapped in the ice from.
Oh,
the
yeah,
guys
that's right.
In the
That's right.
biplane. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Godzilla movie I have seen the least. So that I figured I was like, I'll go with that one.
It's an underrated film, but I'll give you one more guess.
Okay, train. Is it Gojira? The first Godzilla? Okay.
The correct answer is Rodan.
Oh, Rodan. Okay, yeah. Wow.
Yep. That's actually a fan favorite. I know the guys from Kaiju Apostle, our friend Nathan, Elijah, all of us really think that that's actually a solid movie. And I've talked to a lot of I've talked to a lot of science fiction fans that aren't necessarily Godzilla fans who say they have really enjoyed that one. But for some reason, this person did not and decided to give it 1/2 star.
Yeah, that's. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's what whenever I was doing this Guess the Bad movie review last time, I tried to pick funny ones because, like, I don't want to make fun of anybody's opinion because people have different opinions. If you don't like a movie, that's fully okay. But when people do silly things like, oh man, you remember the last one when it was Godzilla 1984, and they went through a whole story about their life and what was wrong with their life and how their butt isn't as firm as they wanted it to be because they haven't been exercising. And it was just like, this is a monster movie review. Why are you doing this?
I found several like that, but I just didn't want to go through the journey this time, honestly. just was not willing to go down that rabbit hole. I've got some pretty good ones here, but I've got 7 total. So 1 down, 6 to go.
Okay.
So here's the next one. A big insult to both monsters that fight on screen. The musical score is easily the best part of this movie. The worst part easily is the suit. I've seen Halloween costumes that cost under $10 that look better.
Oh, that's got to be King Kong versus Godzilla.
That is correct.
Yeah, I know. I know what people complain about with that movie. I know the chief complaint.
that is correct. And that film does get some hate. But I personally love it. I do. I personally love King Kong versus Godzilla. If you view that film, if you're able to view that film as sort of a comedy or sort of a satire, it's actually a really fun movie. But if you try to take it too seriously, yeah, you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, my favorite review for that one last time that we did this was that woman sure says Kong a lot. Like, well,
oh, it's right. You did use King Kong versus. I forgot about that.
I mean, he's in the movie. It's like, what do you expect?
Oh, I forgot about that. Daggone it! If I remembered that, I wouldn't have used that one. Okay.
That's all right. Okay, next one.
Okay. This one's a short one for you. This film earned a PhD in stupid.
Oh, man. I'm going to go with Godzilla 98. Man.
You want to guess again? I'll give you one more. I'll be kind.
I can't think. There's not much to go on there, so.
First thing that comes to your mind, go.
Godzilla versus Mothra.
Nope.
Okay.
Wrong again. It's Godzilla's Revenge, or All Monsters Attack for everyone. Everyone else.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to find a really funny one for this one, but all of them were super specific, and I didn't want to make it too easy. So this is just the most generalized review that I could possibly find about that movie.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know we like to say that there are no such thing as bad opinions, but this is sort of a bad opinion because I've actually grown to like. I know a lot of folks have grown to like Godzilla's Revenge. Over the years.
I'm still on the fence about it. I need to revisit it. I need to revisit it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it does deserve a reevaluation for sure. Like a lot of the Showa films that people like to poop all over.
Yeah.
So
all right. Give me a good one. All
right. I was warned about this one. Very bad CGI effects and really hateable human characters bring this one down. The Big G himself is barely in it. And get this, the military wins. Yes, the military actually succeeded in beating Godzilla and without the anti-war messages of the original. And that's just as lame as it sounds. To make it more lame, the military HQ looks like it's on a very low budget, and again, the characters are just so irritating and refuse to evolve in any way. I just feel like this is a really bad JSDF propaganda film.
See, I want to say, because you say bad CGI, you're talking about Godzilla, I immediately want to say G98 again, because that's just like, that's the way it's leaning towards. And, of course, the military defeats Godzilla in that, and that's one of the big things that people complain about. But I think you're throwing me a... go ahead.
I did say that all of these films are in the Toho catalog.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I see. The review makes me want to say G98, but I think you were throwing me a curveball there, and I think it's going to be Shin Godzilla.
Nope.
Oh.
You're wrong. I did throw you a little bit of a curveball, and I knew this one was a little bit tough for you. It was going to be a little bit tougher. So I'll go ahead and tell you, the answer to this one is actually Godzilla versus Megaguirus from 2000.
Wow. Yeah, because that definitely does sound like a complaint someone might have for G98, and that's definitely a complaint that I can see someone having for Shin Godzilla, even though I wouldn't agree with it. But so yeah, oh man,
yeah, it's I tried to. There was a lot of, when I was reading through the reviews on this movie, there was a lot of references to buttholes, and I really wanted to pick one of those, but they were all super long. So,
is there something about a butthole in that movie? I don't remember that.
I don't know what the connection that people were making between the black hole and Godzilla's butthole. I don't know.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't understand it, so I was like, okay, that's just dumb.
I would have, if it was me playing this one, this round, or doing the round.
You would have picked the butthole.
I would have picked one of the butthole ones. Absolutely, I would have picked one of the butthole reviews.
You're a lot like Alex. You both love. Well, no, I'm not.
Let's stop that sentence right there. Okay,
I'm gonna stop right there. I'm glad that I caught myself, because I was gonna say something on air that I was gonna regret dearly. So we'll just leave it right there. Okay. There's a little inside joke for you guys between us and the guys from Monsters vs. Men. There we go. Okay, I've got two more.
Okay.
Two more. So I'll try to end these on a high note.
Okay.
Why do civilians not know who Godzilla is in any of these movies? Would it be great if there was some sort of continuity? It would be great if there was some sort of continuity after 50 years of monster attacks. They are consistent about some things, though. The effects are cheesy, and the dialogue is truly ridiculous. After all these years, why can't the Western voiceover actors pronounce nuclear correctly? I'm guessing the Japanese doesn't take these movies very seriously. I sure hope they don't.
I'm just gonna go for. Let's go for GMK. Yeah.
You want to guess? This one's a little tough. You want to guess again? I'll give you another guess on this one.
Because it has to be one of the ones, because in the Showa era, everybody does know who Godzilla is. In the Heisei era, everyone knows who Godzilla is. So it has to be like from a Millennium period film, because those are the ones where that each movie was kind of in its own continuity. So let's go with Godzilla versus I don't know.
This would have been a good one for Megaguirus, but it's not written about Megaguirus.
Let's say Godzilla. I don't know. Godzilla Final Wars.
Nope, wrong again. The correct answer is Godzilla versus Destroyer.
Destroyer! They do know who Godzilla is in that movie.
I know. That's why I thought this review was so stupid. I mean, it's literally like the final act of the Oxygen Destroyer continuity.
Right? Yeah, they do know who Godzilla is. The movie opens with Godzilla. And then he's melting down, and then they talk about how all this time Godzilla's been building up his energies, and now he's starting to melt down. So it's like, that's weird. That's weird. But I do see where they're getting the nuclear thing, because they do say nuclear wrong in that a lot.
How do they say it in that? Is it nuclear? Wait, I don't even know how they say it in the movie. I haven't seen that movie in forever. Maybe I need to watch that.
Yeah, because I think the proper way of saying it is nuclear, but they say nuclear.
Nuclear. Okay. Did I say nuclear or nuclear?
I think you said it right.
Okay. Maybe. Well, when this episode comes out, we'll know for sure. But I think I said it right, but I'm not 100% sure now, because you're making me question myself.
Yeah, I know. I always question myself whenever somebody talks about that. I'm like, which one do I say? Nuclear or nuclear?
It's an easy thing to screw up. I get that part. But the whole 50 years of the continuity and 50 years of monster attacks. I mean, the Heisei trilogy, the Heisei era of Godzilla does have fairly good continuity.
Exactly.
And like I said, this is the third act of the Oxygen Destroyer trilogy. So,
right. Yeah. So that makes no sense.
This person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. So we're going to end on a high note.
Okay. Hit me.
And I had to phone a friend on this one, because I needed to find out in what context this word is being used.
Okay.
Any sense whatsoever. So there you go. That'll give you a little primer for what I'm about to read.
Okay.
Okay. This movie is a pastiche in the same sense that my bowel movements are a pastiche of everything I've eaten early in the day.
That is someone who is taking like high school English classes, and
they discovered the word pastiche.
Yeah, it's like, I just learned this word, so now I have to use it in a sentence. Okay, I have no idea.
Boy.
I'm gonna throw out Shin Godzilla again, just because.
Man, you got Shin Godzilla on the brain today.
I just know that Shin Godzilla is a gold mine when it comes to finding terrible reviews, or not just negative reviews of the movie, but like reviews of people just making very stupid arguments. So, so that's why I keep saying Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, the reviews I found on Shin Godzilla were very wordy and
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. I can say that it's not Shin Godzilla though.
Okay.
It is not Shin Godzilla. Just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to read this one more time. Because for kicks and giggles. This movie is a pastiche in the same sense that my bowel movements are a pastiche of everything I've eaten earlier in the day. And I had to phone a friend to make sure that this person is using the word pastiche correctly. And it turns out they're not. But that's a whole other story.
Of course.
Turns out they're not actually using it correctly. Okay, so the answer to this review is Godzilla Final Wars.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe they're trying to say that Final Wars is a pastiche of Destroy All Monsters, maybe?
I don't know. Pastiche. Let me look that. I gotta look that up.
Well, no, pastiche, because I looked this up already, man.
Okay.
Pastiche is like directly mimicking something. Like directly mimicking the characteristics of something without it being like a parody. Because a parody, sort of like Saturday Night Live, like they'll do parodies of like Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and they're making fun of something.
Right,
in order
it's meant to be humorous.
Right, they're making fun of something to highlight a specific message about that particular subject. From the way I understood it, a pastiche is not necessarily making fun of something, but mimicking something just for the sake of mimicking it. There's no other underlying reason why you would do it.
Right, so like how Quentin Tarantino uses kind of a like the old gangster style movies and stuff, and kung fu movies as his inspiration for his films. So he has kind of like a pastiche of those.
Sort of. That's the way I understood it. And like I said, I had to phone a friend just to make sure that this person was using the word pastiche correctly. And it turns out they're not, which doesn't really shock me because it's the internet and people don't use words correctly anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So there we go. That is the last bad review I have for you, Travis. You did okay. I was hoping that you would guess a little bit more of these, but I will admit these are kind of hard.
Yeah, I mean, I was just throwing ones out there because I'm like, I don't know, and it's funny just to guess random stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's funny, and I can honestly see where you would get G98 for that one question about the bad CGI because, yeah, the CGI in that one hasn't held up too well over the years.
And I also see where that's coming from with Shin Godzilla too, because Shin Godzilla, you don't expect it to be so CG heavy, but it's CGI heavy. So yeah.
Yeah, there were some bad CGI moments in that one too. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. So Travis, don't we have a main topic to get into this week?
Yeah, so hopefully the listeners enjoyed that, and we will bring more of that later down the line whenever we don't have a news story to cover. Yeah, let's get into our main topic. So our main topic this week, we asked the trivia question last week to hint to this main topic, and I did not put down any of the answers that I promised people I would give them a shout out, so I'm going to have to pull that up on my phone.
No. Well, through the magic of editing, we'll be able to cut all of that dead air out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does anyone want me to sing them a song? I can whistle the Gamera theme right now for the next however many minutes it takes Travis to pull all that information up.
This has never happened on the show. In the 40 weeks that we've been doing this show, this has never happened. But not a single person answered it correctly. Now, we always say that you don't have to answer it correctly because we'll give you a shout out anyway.
Yeah, we sure do.
So the question is that we asked last week, Don Messick, the original voice of Scooby-Doo, also voiced a certain kaiju's nephew in what 1970s TV show? So we're trying to find the name of the TV show. And so starting on Facebook, because that's what I have here, we have Greg Nunman, Known Man, Nona Man. It said Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon as Godzookie. Okay, I was wrong. Somebody did answer it right. He answered it right.
I was getting ready to say you just read the correct answer.
Yeah, okay, because I just read it. He said as Godzookie, so I lumped him in with all the ones who said Godzookie. But yeah, so he did answer it right. So Greg, congratulations. You were the only person this week who answered it correctly because you actually gave us the name of the cartoon the TV show that we were looking for, not the character that Don Messick voiced.
Gotcha.
Oroyden Carroll said Godzookie.
Okay.
And Marie Moorman, or Moorman, the Great Godzookie is what she put.
Uh-huh.
And then on Instagram, Johnny Gallagher 47 said Godzookie! Exclamation point. And then on Twitter, we had a few funny answers. Okay, so Elijah answered with Godzookie. Our friend Elijah, who hosts the Kaiju Conversation podcast and has the number, I think it's still number 2 largest Discord, Kaiju focused Discord server.
It was number 3 last time I talked to him, but
it might be number 3. Number 3 and number 2. I know he's not number 1, but I know that's where they're going. They're heading towards it. And then Giant Monster BS, our friends over at the Giant Monster BS podcast, said Monsters Inc. I knew it. I said this was it last week or the week before. I said that I know they have sent Monsters Inc. in before, and I was wondering if they send Monsters Inc. in for every episode.
Well, we're still going to have to go back and confirm because they could have just... I know they listened to our Cloverfield episode where we mentioned it. So they may just be trolling a little bit, Travis.
Yeah, I'm sure. They love to troll. And we love you guys. You guys always give us a funny answer, so that's fine. Monster Island Film Vault podcast said Ultraman, The Adventure Begins, which was the Hanna-Barbera production of Ultraman.
Close, but no cigar.
Yeah. They also gave us the answer, Uncle Zilla's Neighborhood. Which I really like that one. That one's a good one.
Yeah.
Jimmy from NASA said All in the Kaiju Family, which is funny.
It is.
And then let's see, what's this person's Twitter hashtag or Twitter hashtag, Twitter username. Atomic Monster Casey said Godzookie. Weird that they didn't just make him his son instead of nephew.
Yeah, no, it's a weird choice making them a nephew and not just...
Yeah, but then you have to talk about Godzilla procreation and stuff. And do we really want that in a kid's show?
This is a shipping-free podcast, Travis.
Oh, man. The Monster Island Board of Directors said, fools, the only logical and correct answer is Godzookie. Otherwise known as the island's resident pain in the beep.
I think I interacted with them.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
And then Henry from It Came From a Monster podcast, or It Came From a Monster Movie podcast, said Godzookie. And then Justin Baker said, is it the great and majestic Godzookie?
In which you responded?
I responded, you have been blessed by the great Godzookie.
Still the greatest meme in our catalog to this day.
I do really love that meme. It's so great. And when I first made it, I was like, is this going too far? Yeah, probably, but I still like it. So like I said, we've only had one correct answer because we were looking for the TV show, not the character. And but the TV show that we are covering is the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla, the animated series from 1978 to 1979. And it stars Ted Cassidy as the voice of Godzilla, Don Messick as the voice of Godzookie, Jeff David as Captain Carl Majors, Al Iceman as Pete Darren, and Hilly Hicks as Brock Borden, and Brenda Thompson as Dr. Quinn Darren.
Mm-hmm.
And the plot breakdown for the show is the crew of the research vessel, the Calico, investigate strange phenomena and strange monsters. They are aided by the giant fire-breathing Godzilla and his winged nephew, Godzookie.
Which is literally, if anyone's familiar with the Godzilla animated series from 1998, it's pretty much the same thing.
Except there's no Godzookie.
Except that, yeah, of course, there's no Godzookie, but there's
no Godzookie.
But there's a Winston.
There's a Winston. Oh, is that the robot?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a while since
Nigel, not Winston.
Nigel. I was gonna say Nigel. Nigel was the robot.
Nigel. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to cover just the first season, so the first 13 episodes of the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla series. We might come back and do the second season later on down the line, but
we will. We definitely will.
Let's get into opening thoughts. Michael, what are your opening thoughts on the first season of Godzilla the Animated Series?
It's been a long time since I've watched this, and to be honest with you, I kind of had low expectations going into it. I will say that this series benefits a lot from nostalgia and banking on whether or not you are a diehard Godzilla fan or not. I enjoyed it, honestly. It was a lot of fun watching it. There's a lot of unique plots. And there's a lot of unique monsters. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. And but yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was weird. I'm just gonna say this. There's some times in this show that really make you kind of throw up your hands and say, "What just happened?" But overall, it's a lot of fun. I really liked it.
Yeah, now I went into watching this with high expectations because I remember because neither one of us were born in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't watch this show when it first came out. But I remember when this show was coming on, I think it was, I forget which channel it was coming on, but it would come on early in the morning. And so I remember waking up early in the morning to watch the show quite a bit back when I was real young. And I loved it as a kid. I remember really having fun with it. And so I went into watching this and I'm like, oh yeah, this was a show I watched when I was a kid. I really love it. I've revisited shows from my childhood and I enjoy them still now. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy this. And then I watched the first few episodes. And I'm like, man, this show really doesn't hold up as well as I was hoping it would.
I think you're right. There are, like I said, this show really banks on whether or not you're nostalgic for either it or the franchise or the concept of Godzilla or the character of Godzilla rather itself. I remember watching this one on Cartoon Network, like the early days of Cartoon Network.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moved over to when, oh God, what is the what was the channel where they had all the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons?
Boomerang?
Boomerang. Yeah. Okay,
I think that's where I watched it.
Yeah, because they had this. Because this came on back to back with He-Man.
Right.
Yeah. So I remember watching this in the early days of Boomerang, and I don't know exactly because I haven't watched the Boomerang channel in forever. I think it's still around, but I'm not sure.
No, it's not.
But the early days of Cartoon Network and Boomerang and all that, I really enjoyed it, and I thought I was like I had not seen this show. Like we said, we didn't grow up in the 70s. I was born in 86, and I grew up in the 90s. So I'm a 90s kid. So, and same with you.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't get exposed to this show until much later and sort of after the fact. And when we did get to watch it, it was sporadic, few and far between. Kind of like you kind of have to catch it. I remember it not being on like a really specific schedule. It was
Right.
more like it felt more like they used the show as filler to just fill a spot.
Yeah.
Whenever they needed a spot filled. There we go.
Yeah. Now I like a lot of I will say this though, and I like a lot of old Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Oh, so do I. So do I.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the Herculoids. I love Space Ghost. I love a lot of those old ones. And so me not thinking it held, me feeling like this show didn't hold up has nothing to do with the fact that it's just an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon, because there are plenty of old Hanna-Barbera cartoons I do enjoy.
Mhm.
I will say though that even though I felt like at the beginning of the season, it felt like the show didn't really hold up to what I remember it being. By the time you get towards the end of season 1, it actually is really good. And I actually did have a lot of fun with it. So I think the second half of the first season, it really picks up and starts getting a lot better. And we can get into that as we get into our likes and dislikes.
Yeah, after episode 7, the series does get a lot more fun.
Yeah. The first few episodes, it just kind of like, it's very formulaic. It's kind of the same thing over and over again, and it's not as interesting. And then you get into the really weird stuff, like you mentioned and oh man, did I love that. I love when cartoons and it's one of the reasons why I love comic books so much, is because comic books can go weird. I love when comic books go weird. Like, they have realistic, more grounded comic books, but man, my favorites are always the ones that go really weird. And this show, once it started going weird, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm here for it. Let's get into some of our likes and dislikes. So what are some things you liked about this show? And you can be specific about specific episodes if you want, because like we're just covering the whole season as a whole. But what are some things that you liked about the first season of this show?
So the first thing that I like is, well, I don't know if I like it. I'm still on the fence of whether or not I like it or not. But I found it really interesting that Hanna-Barbera stripped the character of Godzilla down to its very most basic components, which is giant fire-breathing dinosaur, right? There was no nuclear message. There was some environmental stuff, but that mainly had to do with the other kaiju in the movie, in the show, in the episodes. But it was interesting to me how Westerners viewed, like, is this to you, Travis, a really accurate representation of how Westerners view Godzilla?
Now, well, see, that's interesting, because if you just asked me, is this a faithful representation of Godzilla, I would have said no. This is not, Godzilla. Godzilla is not generally is not a friendly monster that comes when you call him, and he definitely doesn't shoot lasers out of his eyes. But you asked me if this is a good representation of what Westerners think of when they think of Godzilla, and I think at the time, yeah, I think it was pretty close to what Westerners, because even if you look at, because I'm looking at it right now, the poster for Godzilla King of the Monsters, the 1955 or 56, recut with Raymond Burr version of Godzilla, that in that poster, Godzilla is green and has very expressive like eyes. And the atomic breath looks more like fire. It's like painted orange, like fire.
Right. Yeah.
So
I'm looking at the same poster, so I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think that, I think as much as we might want to kind of knock this Godzilla as being like, oh, this is just a dumb, version of Godzilla, I think this is actually more closer to what maybe Americans were thinking of when they thought of Godzilla. Than we like to admit.
Yeah, I think you're on to something, because, as you pointed out, I am looking at this poster here, and you're right. In this poster and in the show, Godzilla is green. Obviously and if we think about it, media up to that point that featured a giant dinosaur or a giant reptile, they were all green or some shade of green or something. So yeah, I don't think you're far off. I don't think we're far off base at all by saying that maybe this is what Westerners thought of when they thought of Godzilla, or they heard the word Godzilla. They just thought of a giant dinosaur who spits fire, which I don't know exactly where the laser eyes come from, but that was probably added as sort of an extra thing to make the character more interesting. Right.
Yeah. I know. I think there was maybe a talks to make him more
superhero-esque.
Yeah, more like a Superman type character, because he definitely does feel that way.
Yeah, because this Godzilla definitely has a personality. He's very anthropomorphic in his mannerisms and the way he interacts with our human protagonists, and the way he problem solved. And not to get super deep in the weeds here, but honestly, I really think that this is probably the most intelligent Godzilla that we've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, he understands, he understands anytime they spit out the like science mumbo jumbo, he seems to understand what they're saying. So it's like, he seems to understand complex things. So he definitely seems very intelligent.
Yeah, there's definitely some pseudoscience involved with this show. Like I know we like to kind of make fun of Toho for their pseudoscience, but I mean, American cartoons, American science fiction shows, movies had their fair bit of pseudoscience themselves. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I'm a Star Trek fan. The science mumbo jumbo is.
Yeah, I mean,
like
but
bread
still,
and butter to me.
To me, the reason I like Star Trek more than Star Wars is because I feel like Star Trek is a little bit more grounded.
Yeah, I don't know. I just watched the other day the episode where the Enterprise gets stuck in a time loop, and a lot of the sciencey mumbo jumbo that they were spitting out, I'm like, half of those words are just made up.
Yeah, probably so. I just finished the original series, but this is not a Star Trek podcast. Although,
right. So let me get. Yeah, I know. There's plenty of Star Trek podcasts. Like Kaiju are so few and far between. That's why we are doing Kaiju instead of Star Trek. Anyway. That's neither here nor there. My positives about the show. One of the positives I wanted to talk about was the theme song for this series. Because that theme song, I think everyone remembers the theme song.
Up from the depths, 30
stories high, head in the clouds.
Nope, you've already screwed it up.
Oh, didn't that? How did I mess it up?
It goes up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky, Godzilla.
Yeah. Godzilla, and Godzookies. Yeah, okay. So maybe it's not as memorable as I think. But yeah, no, I think that theme song, it's really great. It was written by the same people who did I think it was the same. If I don't have it in front of me now, but I think it was written by the same ones who did like the Johnny Quest theme song and the
I love Johnny Quest.
Yeah, and the it might be, I think the Scooby-Doo theme song was written by the same person. So yeah, it's I think it's really good. One of the things I do want to mention now, this is coming from me, a 30-year-old white person, but while Brock, the character of Brock, isn't necessarily, I can see where it's not necessarily the best representation of a character of color.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give them props for at least thinking about it.
Right, absolutely.
And the fact that
this time, I was gonna say, at this time, I think we and I were talking about, there was not a whole lot of people of color represented in like children's television. Am I correct?
Yeah. There really wasn't. There really wasn't a lot of people of color being represented, and the ones that were there weren't necessarily represented right. But I do want to mention though that Hanna-Barbera, as a company, did really put that forward in their cartoons. Like if you look at a good example of Super Friends, at a time period when people of color are not really represented and no one's going to blink an eye for not having a person of color in your show, and they decide to add Apache Chief, they add Black Vulcan, which is like their version of Black Lightning. They add these, I think the character Samurai was added in there. So they're at least thinking about it, which I think should count for something. It shows that they were at least forward thinking. Now, again, it's not necessarily the greatest representation, but it was the 1970s.
Yeah, of course. And another character that comes to mind who happens to be a person of color is Haji. Is it Haji from Johnny Quest?
Haji's in Johnny Quest.
Yeah. Okay. So even though that character, I will admit, is very stereotyped.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going to give Hanna-Barbera a thumbs up for at least including it, because they didn't have to.
Right.
And like you said, media at that time in the mid to late 70s, you didn't see a whole lot of persons of color represented in these television shows. It was always, at the very most, dark-haired white people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I had to mention that because I just had to give that give them props on that.
Right, for sure.
Another positive for me is I do think that the storylines in a lot of the episodes were very creative, especially like we said when you get into the second half. Because they get creative.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that, Travis, because I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Before we kind of get into the dislikes, because I don't want to hate on this. I know there are some dislikes, but I want this to be a pretty even-handed discussion about the series. What were your standout episodes out of this first season?
So to me, the two episodes that stand out the most are, and I can't remember the names. I have to pull up the names. Hold on, let me do that real quick because I do want to get the names of the episodes.
I'll do the same thing. We'll cut this out.
Yeah, I am wildly underprepared today.
No, it's fine. Why is that zoomed in so far? Okay, anyway.
Okay, so I really liked the episode The Colossus of Atlantis.
That was a good one.
Yeah, so they go to, they discover Atlantis, they travel to Atlantis, and there's a robot. They discover that everyone from Atlantis is in suspended animation because there was a disaster, and so they all went into suspended animation. And then the robot that was supposed to wake them up after a certain amount of time didn't, and Godzilla has to fight the giant robot to save not only the Atlanteans who are frozen in suspended animation, but also because Brock and Quinn get sent back in time through a time machine to when Atlantis was still around, and they also go into suspended animation to avoid getting killed by the disaster. And so it is wild. It is so wild. And then to top it all off, they find out at the very end of it that Atlantis was just a spaceship. And it takes off and goes back into space. And it's like, what even is this? What even is this?
I mean, for a 1970s kids show, I'll have to give them props because that's pretty creative.
Have you ever watched, I don't know how much into sci-fi you are, but have you ever watched the show Stargate?
I've seen a few episodes when it was on the old Sci-Fi channel. Yeah,
and so now that is so much like a storyline that is in Stargate. And that was a modern, sci-fi. This show was in the 1970s, and they told a story that becomes a major plot line in a sci-fi show in the 2000s. Like, it just shows how creative they were. That kind of story just is still being told. So I don't know. I like that. The other episode that stands out to me is surprisingly, it's the Breeder Beast.
Which is a really misleading name.
It's a really misleading. Well, it's not misleading if you know science, which I had to look it up, because a breeder reactor is a nuclear reactor that when it generates more nuclear material and radioactive material than it actually uses. So it actually produces radioactive material in the process of also using up radioactive material. And so that's why it's called a breeder reactor.
Okay, so that so I was wrong when I said that this show didn't touch on nuclear.
Right? Yeah, nuclear.
Nuclear.
I know, right?
There we go.
But
when they didn't touch on those themes.
Yeah, but that's the thing. This episode is like the only episode where they actually do touch on it, and that's what stood out to me. Was that this was the episode where they went fully into that whole idea of, nuclear power and radiation is a dangerous thing, and kind of the themes that we know Godzilla for, they actually brought into this episode, and the fact that it was a giant monster that Godzilla couldn't fight directly the way that he normally just breathes fire on it. Like there was actually, they had to come up with creative ways to defeat it and everything. And so it was just really, it was really intense and kind of, it had me on the edge of my seat for a 1970s kids show to have me on the edge of my seat. Like, how are they going to defeat this monster? It's rampaging through Washington, D.C. How are they going to beat it? We just don't know, because every time they would do something, it would break through. It would not. So I think that episode really stood out to me as just really, really excellent storytelling. Yeah,
this was this was the one where it kind of reminded me a little bit of Hedera, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very similar to Hedera.
Yeah, that because I thought about that when I watched this particular episode. In fact, the roar for this particular creature sort of sounds like the cackle used for Hedera, if I'm remembering it correctly. Which, if we're all Godzilla fans, if you've not seen Godzilla vs. Hedera or Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, is basically a giant tadpole mutated by pollution comes to rampage across Tokyo. Godzilla has to stop it. Yada yada yada. Go watch the movie; it's good.
Which is the story of this thing. Right. It's this microscopic creature that was mutated through radiation and pollution and becomes gigantic.
Yeah, and at the end of the episode, she basically scoops it up into into a jar and says, "Oh, this is what it actually is."
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So now I mentioned what standout episodes I had. What were some standout episodes to you?
Let's see. Like I said, the series gets better after about episode 6. One honorable mention is the Energy Beast. I know you and I like that one a lot.
Oh yeah, I didn't know when I first started watching that, I didn't think I would like it. Yeah, but then when you get to the part where there's 2 Godzillas, and that, I was like, okay, I'm on board with this, because at first it just was kind of generic, like all the other previous episodes, right? But then it goes in a totally different way than I expected it to go, and so yeah, definitely. Right, but one of the ones I picked out because it was just so over the top was it was episode 9, titled "Island of Lost Ships." So basically, the crew of the Calico they crash land on this rock, and then they have to come ashore to this island. And it's kind of teased early on in the episode where the captain is being lured by the siren song, and so when they come ashore to this island, they're greeted by in my notes it literally says Greek woman, because I cannot remember what her name is. But in that episode, we are greeted by not 1, not 2, but 3 kaiju. We're greeted by first the Minotaur, then the Chimera, and then the episode ends with the Chimera. Then the woman, the Greek woman, grows into a kaiju herself, merges with the Chimera to make the Chimera stronger. Oh boy, that
That episode is wild.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that stood out to me, I messaged you as soon as I watched this episode because I was like, there are three Greek women. I told a putty tat. Three Greek women who are in this, and they are the sirens of Greek legend, is what they're supposed to be. And they merge into one giant Greek woman. And it's like, these women Voltroned into a giant woman. And it's like, what? What?
Yeah, they did. I told you the episode 9 was one of my favorites just because of how crazy it was.
Yeah, so crazy. I was like, okay, this is the turning point, I think, when I was like, this show is just nuts, and I love it.
Yeah, and then I think the other episode that I wanted to mention that kind of stood out to me was actually the last episode of season 1, the Time Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
The Time Dragons was really fun. And really, basically, that episode is just they wind up back in time on this island where they have to avoid and fight dinosaurs. They run into this civilization of cavemen. Their names escape me, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so they have to defeat this Tyrannosaurus, but they call them all dragons. Which was kind of weird, but kind of makes sense because, you know, back in the day, back in the medieval times, or well, this is not medieval times, but anyway, everything probably would have been referred to as a dragon because they didn't know the difference, or they didn't know the difference between a dinosaur and a dragon. And, you know, the crew of the Calico became the dragon. Was it the Dragon Whisperer or the Dragon something? It was the Dragon something. Yeah, anyway, so the way they defeat the Allosaurus or the Tyrannosaurus at the end of it, which was basically a knockoff of Gorosaurus, they found a pool of uranium and made mud balls out of them, which it turns out the uranium is what you can use to go back and forth through the time scape, which was crazy. Like, I can see Godzilla being able to pick up uranium and use it, but it didn't quite make sense to me for humans to be able to pick up the uranium and use it. You know.
Right, yeah.
It's sort of one of those instances where you kind of gotta suspend your belief a little bit. And if I'm a 6-year-old kid watching this movie, I don't know what uranium is. For all I know, it's just shiny silver mud that they use to go back and forth in time, which, you know, that episode's a lot of fun. Of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. We need to move on because we need to get into. Let's talk about. I don't want to dwell on dislikes, but there are some things that I think are negative about the series.
Sure.
One of the things is the dated animation style.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, it's from the 70s. Of course, it's Hanna-Barbera. While a lot of them are a lot of their shows are a lot of fun, they also did have, you know, they did some of their animation on the cheap. And so there was a lot of shortcuts in there. And so I think that, you know, you get a lot of size inconsistencies in the show. You know, sometimes Godzilla is humongous, sometimes he's smaller, sometimes Godzookie is 10 foot tall, sometimes he's the size of a human. You know, it's just like there's so many size inconsistencies there. The voice acting is very cheesy and hammy and very much of the time period that it came out in.
Right.
My biggest complaint for the show is the fact that I think is one of the reasons why the show didn't last long, and it's not as because, you know, it only lasted 2 seasons. And I think one of the reasons why people didn't connect with this show as much back in the day is because the human characters were not as memorable as, you know, you look at like other Hanna-Barbera shows like Scooby-Doo and how memorable all the human characters are in that. or you look at the Herculoids or Space Ghost or Johnny Quest and all them, like how memorable all of those human characters, all the characters are in those shows.
Right.
And these human characters in this one just aren't as memorable and interesting to me. So what'd you think of that? And what are some other, maybe negatives that you had on the show?
The human characters to me are serviceable. They're completely serviceable. They're very uninspired. It's just they're kind of a bore to listen to, and then you've got the Kenny there that gets on my nerves after a while. But it's a kids show, so I look over that. You're right about the animation, though. The animation was stiff at best, and I don't know how to describe this, so I'm going to just describe it the best way I know how. It was very 2D, very two-dimensional. There was really no depth to any of the any of the drawings, any of the animation. Like everything just looked very flat and rushed to me. Now, I'm not an animator, so I'm not going to sit here and critique the animation skills of the good folks at Hanna-Barbera, because that's well above my pay grade. But from just a casual observer, everything just felt sort of flat. There was life to it, but there was not much life to it, right?
Right.
And I think you're right about the human characters, the human protagonists, sort of uninspired. Some of a lot of the dialogue was cheesy and campy, but it's a kids show, so I can look over that. We get campy, cheesy dialogue in Ultraman, and we both love Ultraman, so we can. There's campy, cheesy dialogue throughout the entire Godzilla franchise, but we still love it. So I won't necessarily knock it for that, for what it was supposed to be. Probably my main gripe, honestly, was how I love and appreciate and also am annoyed with how weird and how far away it did stray away from the actual spirit of the character. And I know that had a lot to do with Hanna-Barbera not able to get certain things that would have made it more Godzilla-y or Godzilla-esque,
right,
than what we did. Like, for instance, the roars. It just literally sounded like a man going "Roar" into the microphone.
Which it was, because especially for Godzilla was the voice of Ted. It was Ted Cassidy, who played Lurch in the Addams Family series. Like
the only real actual produced roar that I can think of, maybe the one from what's the episode that you really liked, the Breeder Beast.
Oh,
that one actually had a roar attached to it, and the Tyrannosaurus in the final episode, the Time Dragons, that actually had a legitimate roar to it. But everything else just literally sounded like a guy making animal noises into a microphone.
Yeah, we were still a few years away from Frank Welker becoming the go-to guy for animal noises in animated TV shows, because anybody who knows voice acting and knows animation, Frank Welker, one of the things that he did, just to show you, I mean, he also has done the voice of Megatron and a million other things, but he did all of the roars in The Lion King. That was him doing those sounds of those lions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because funny enough, capturing a lion roar on tape is very difficult. So they had Frank Welker do the lion roars, and he's just really good at making those sound effects, those animal sound effects. And Frank Welker was around at this time because he was working on Scooby-Doo at the time, but he was still a few years away from really becoming the go-to guy for these sound effects. So yeah, they were just using regular guys, regular actors to make the roar sound, and it just
and everything else I said that I sort of disliked about the series, I can kind of look over because of, one, when this was made, two, who it was made for, right? But I guess sort of the roars, and as silly as it sounds, like the roars were sort of the icing on that cake, where it took a lot of times when I'm watching these episodes, I'm enjoying them. And then when the sound effects come on, it takes me out of the moment because it just sounds off, right?
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. I can definitely see that. I I totally understand that. I want to move into, I want to talk, we're going to make a positivity sandwich here.
Sure.
So
let's go for it.
We've talked about our negatives. We talked about our positives to begin with, then we talked about our negatives. But before we get into our closing positives, I want to get into a few of the fun facts here because it ties into what you were talking about. So, the only real fun fact that I have, because there's not a lot that I have for this show, is in episode 8, which is another really crazy fun episode. There is a reference in a cave drawing to Ultraman.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. Okay. So you showed me a picture of it, but I also remember that episode. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was kind of cool that there was this reference to Ultraman, and this would be years before Hanna-Barbera would do their own version of Ultraman. So
it appears to be like a Ultra 7.
Yeah, at least
it looks like.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like Ultra 7, or because there's 2 of them standing next to each other, so it could be the original Ultraman and Ultra 7 next to each other. So yeah, it's interesting. It was an interesting little nugget there that I found. Now, one thing that I found interesting. Now, this is an excerpt from Japan's Favorite Monstar, the unauthorized biography of the Big G by Steve Rifle. And in this book, he actually quotes Joseph Barbera, who was a big... I need you to get your thing off of there because your name is showing up as blocking what I was reading. Thank you.
Sorry.
But in it, Joseph Barbera says this quote. He says, "My job back then was to dig up new characters, new ideas, new shows, and I had wanted to do Godzilla for a while." See, I actually found this out, that Joseph Barbera was a fan of Godzilla and of Ultraman at the time. Like, he actually did enjoy those things. So it was kind of cool, and you can kind of see that in the way that they produced these shows. That even though they're not quite they're not faithful adaptations of Godzilla, they still were. You could still see there was a lot of love put into them.
Sure.
He said, "I liked the monster thing and the way it looked, and I thought we could do a lot with it." And then, so he says, "So I contacted Hank Saperstein, however you say that name. Saperstein, okay.
Yeah.
Who was a very good friend, and we got talking about it. But then he goes, and he talks about how they've had the father-son relationship, and they kind of wanted something like that with Godzooky. They've done that with like Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest had a lot, inspired the show a lot, which you can kind of see with the way the show is. Right. But he said the problem with the show was simply this: when they start telling you in standards and practices that you can't shoot any flames at anybody, don't step on any buildings or cars, then he said pretty soon they've taken away all the stuff that Godzilla represents. And that became the problem. To maintain a feeling of Godzilla, at the same time cut down everything that he did and that he's known for. That's kind of why the show became so different than what maybe diehard Godzilla fans are used to.
Right, and that's why you see a lot of, which makes a lot of sense now, because you see a lot of water battles in this series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like that somebody else, Dwayne Poole, who was a producer on the show, or helped develop the show, he said that they didn't want to use, or they couldn't use they couldn't use a lot of the kaiju from the Godzilla franchise, so they kind of were inspired by the monsters, but not directly translating them. And you can kind of see that with, like you were saying, the breeder beast. It basically is Hedorah. And sure. You've got the first monster that they even fight in the series is Rodan. It's not called Rodan, but it's basically Rodan. So I like that they did that. I think that showed a lot of creativity, where they would take the ideas of these monsters and translate them over into the show, but not directly. They would kind of be creative and do their own thing with them.
Yeah, for sure.
And that being said, I did want to ask you a question, since we're talking about the monsters in the series. What was your favorite monster? Now, we talked about our favorite episodes, but what was your favorite monster in the show?
Oh boy. You're catching me off guard a little bit.
Well, I have it highlighted in red in the show notes.
Oh, well, maybe I looked over that. I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing out, Travis, to the listener that I can't read. Thank you. I'm gonna go with. A lot of these monsters were pretty silly. I'll be honest with you. They were. They were pretty silly and like a lot of times I couldn't take. They were so silly I couldn't take them seriously. So I'm gonna go with the Chimera, from episode 9. The lion bull / snake hybrid.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. My favorite monsters, I have 2 of them. So I really liked the magnetic monster just because I liked the design.
Sure.
And it was from episode, I forget which episode it was from now.
Like 6, wasn't it? 5 or 6?
Yeah, something like that, where it was a big turtle. And,
right, yeah.
And I'm a sucker for turtles. I love turtles so much.
Of course.
So, I had to go with that one. But
it was episode 10, the Magnetic Terror.
Okay, yeah, that one. But I really liked the Cyclops from the one where in episode 8.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And the fact that it could turn invisible on top of everything else, it felt a lot like it was inspired by Ray Harryhausen, the Cyclops from Sinbad.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so it kind of took me back to that whole, watching Harryhausen films as a kid and watching the Cyclops from that movie. So that one I think is my favorite out of all the ones that we watched. But yeah, is there any other things that you want to mention before we get into our scores and our final thoughts?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything. This series is. This series is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm gonna say it. I don't really say it in my my final thoughts, but if you're a Godzilla fan, I would say give this show a watch if you haven't watched it, but just realize that from the time period that it comes from, of course, just like a lot of the movies that we love, we have to take them in the context of when they came out.
Right, you have to go into this with the appropriate expectations.
Yeah, but I definitely think the second half of the season, of this first season anyway, the second half is much better than the first half. The first half, it's kind of, boring and formulaic, whereas, you start getting into the more weirder, kind of out there, real creative storylines past episode 6.
Yeah, and there's no real origin story. Like when episode 1, I think it's literally within the first 5 minutes. It's like, hey, get Godzookie to call Godzilla, and
right.
So you automatically know that we're in a world where Godzilla already exists. They don't have to discover Godzilla. They don't have to. There's no backstory as to how Godzilla came to be, similar like what it was during the Godzilla 1998 animated series, where there was a little bit of backstory. Whereas with this, Godzilla is already a thing; he already exists, and apparently he's already been working with these people for some time now.
Right. Yeah. Now, for anyone who's never listened to the podcast before, we usually score the movies that we watch out of 5 Godzookies because we like to pay homage to the great Godzookie and embrace the silly side of these giant monster movies by using him as our yardstick to measure these things. But since Godzookie is such a main part of the thing that we're reviewing this week, I decided to switch it up. Instead of giving it out of 5 Godzookies, let's give it out of 5 Greek women who Voltron into one big giant woman. So, Michael, out of 5 Greek sirens who Voltron into one giant siren, how many of them do you give the first season of Hanna-Barbera Godzilla?
Oh boy. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Travis. Thank you. First of all, thank you for that imagery. Just thinking about it. 5 of them just merging together to make one giant woman kaiju. But anyway. So I have to give this season 1 of Godzilla, the animated series from 1978, produced by Hanna-Barbera. I'm going to go ahead and give it 3.5 Greek siren women who merge at the end of the episode to form one gigantic siren Greek woman. 3.5 of those. Yeah.
Do you want to give your final thoughts too? Go ahead and do that.
Yeah. I will in a second whenever I quit laughing. So, like you said, if you're already a Godzilla fan, if you're already a giant monster nerd, just like the rest of us, definitely give this a watch. It is worth. I will say it is worth your time, but just go in with if you go in with the appropriate expectations, knowing that one, this is a loose adaptation of the character known as Godzilla. It's not a beat for beat a representation of what we know of as Godzilla himself. In fact, I'll hot take Godzilla 1998, the animated series, is more faithful to the concept of Godzilla than even this one was. So, go in with the appropriate expectations. Understand that this is from 1978 because it's going to be dated, right? And just prepare yourself to have fun, especially in the second half of season 1. It's like after episode 6 or 7, it gets weird, it gets crazy, but believe me, it's a lot of fun. And I think that anyone who loves this franchise, who loves this genre in general, as much as I know the rest of us do, it would be worth it. I think you can watch the entire season 1 in less than 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that. So an afternoon, if you have some free time, or spread it across a couple of days like I did. It's definitely worth it. So I suggest just go. Well, we'll provide a link to where me and you watched it, Travis, in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go and watch this for themselves and behold the majesty of the Greek siren women, to know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. And speaking of which, so my Greek siren women who merge into one giant Greek siren woman kaiju score is also 3.5. I also give it a 3.5. I do think this show is fun, especially in the second half, like we said. This show's dated, and it definitely benefits from more than a smidge of nostalgia. So if you are going into it and you don't have the nostalgia for it, I don't expect you to enjoy it as much as what someone who did grow up watching it will enjoy it. But I still think that it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of creativity. And like Michael said, if you enjoy kaiju for the monsters, especially, there's a lot of creative and interesting monsters in this series. For example, the 3 kaiju, or the 3 Greek siren women who merge into one, that's obviously one of them. But ultimately, I do think that the human characters are what makes the show suffer the most. I think that they're just not as interesting as other Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I think the show is not as memorable as other Hanna-Barbera cartoons. But as far as American Godzilla productions go, it's not a bad effort.
No, it's not. It's not. And I think, this one definitely does fly under the radar a little bit when we talk about Godzilla. When we talk about the Godzilla franchise as a whole, this one sort of does fly under the radar a little bit, and I don't really think for the most part it's justified. I see why people have problems with it, but go in with the appropriate expectations and just prepare yourself to have fun. That's really all I can say about this.
Yeah. So let's get into the next segment. We just have a quick little thing that we're going to do next, which is the mailbag.
Mailbag.
It's the mail.
It's the mail. It never fails. But is that right?
Yep,
okay.
That's right.
Gotcha.
What's in the mail today?
So we have a letter from my best friend in the whole wide world, Kershaw, who has sent us stuff
Kershaw,
before.
Best friend in the whole wide world of Travis Alexander.
So, now he sent us 3 different questions in this letter that he sent. I decided to split it up and we'll do just one this week.
Sure.
So if you want to, listeners, just to get it out of the way, if you want to send us a letter and have it read out on the podcast, make sure that you send it to kaijuweekly@gmail.com. That is how Kershaw did it. And so we are reading out his letter. So he says, "Hello, Kaiju Weekly. So all this time spent at home got me rewatching the Godzilla Criterion Collection again, only to leave me wanting more. I used to have some old VHS tapes of a good chunk of the Heisei and Millennium films. Unfortunately, I've lost those in a flood 4 years ago with pretty much everything else I owned." And yes, Kershaw, his home got flooded and a lot of things that he owned was destroyed in that flood. So I'm
sorry.
But he wanted to ask us what we thought were the best options when it comes to owning those movies. He's trying to avoid unnecessary dubs and edits and whatnot. So he says he prefers the Japanese original with English subtitles. And so he wants us to tell him what is the best place to find some of these movies that he lost in the flood. Now, I will start off by saying, Kershaw, you need to send me your address to where you're living now, because I have, if you still have a VHS player, I have a lot of my old VHSs that I have no problem with sending to you if you want to watch some of those old VHS of the Godzilla films, because I have a bunch of them I can send to you. But anyway, Michael, what do you want to tell him?
Well, okay. So if we're strictly talking about Millennium Heisei, I want to say that you can still find the majority of them, if not all of them, on Amazon. You can find like the Sony. If you have a Blu-ray, I'll preface this by saying if you have a Blu-ray DVD player, you can still find some of the double feature discs. The Sony discs for the Heisei and Millennium films. Typically, I think it was they would pair one Millennium film with one Heisei film, or 2 Heisei films on one disc, and they're fairly inexpensive. I was able to grab all of them periodically. I think they were approximately like $9 or some odd a piece. I think the most I ever paid for something like that was like $15 or something. There, you can also find like digital copies of these things, either like through archive.org. You can where you can download both the English. A lot of times you can download both the English dub and the Japanese original language with English subtitles. You can find those on archive.org. I'm sure Travis will send you a link to that. Mm-hmm. And then there's other resources out there.
Voodoo has a bunch of the Heisei and Millennium movies available to buy or rent. And I think Amazon Prime has a bunch of them available.
Yes, Amazon Prime, Voodoo. I want to say Hulu?
No, I don't think Hulu has them anymore. Hulu lost a bunch of the Godzilla stuff that they used to have. They used to have them. If you're going to go with the physical media, like Blu-ray, DVD stuff, the 2 movies that are going to be the hardest to find and purchase are 1984 and Biollante. Those
Yeah.
just seem like the two most difficult ones to get.
And I actually have a resource where he can get his hands on those, so I'll send that to.
I do too. I've got copies of them.
Oh,
I can send to him. I can send him
Okay.
my copies because I've got hard copies of the. Actually, no, I don't have one. 1984. I take that back. I think I sent that one to my cousin already, but I still have my Biollante one because I forgot to send that one to my cousin.
I actually think I have 84. I have an extra copy. I bought it twice and didn't mean to. So I think I may have 84.
Yeah.
Here, I can
So
send.
yeah. So for anyone who's like Kershaw, who is wanting to start getting into the films, maybe you have the Criterion collection, or you're watching on the Criterion channel, the subscription service, and you're watching the Showa era, and you're wanting to get into the Heisei and Millennium films. Yeah, that's some resources that you can find. You can usually find them on Amazon, eBay, but I'd be careful buying stuff on eBay.
I don't trust eBay. Like I've bought
I don't either.
I got a copy of Godzilla versus Biollante on eBay. I did not pay a pound of flesh for it, but I paid more than I wanted to for it, and I'm actually kind of disappointed with the video quality. So a lot of eBay sales like that, 9 times out of 10, they're bootlegs, and so the video quality is gonna be touch and go at best.
And like we said, if you want digital, I know that a lot of films are available on iTunes. You can purchase them and watch them. If you have like iTunes, you want to purchase them through that. Amazon, you can purchase digitally too. You can also
Google Movies still has some Heisei and Millennium Godzilla films.
Yeah, so there's options out there that you can find them, but that's some options for you. But like I said, getting some of the, like especially Biollante is really hard to get physical media, so that one you're more likely to get, I think, a digital version of. But
it's iffy. It's
iffy.
You have to really dig for that one. But I know that there is a quality copy of Biollante on archive.org.
Oh yeah, there definitely is, because I have watched the archive one, and it is a very and the same with 84, Godzilla 1984. There is a quality copy on 84
archive, and 85 you can find on archive.org.
Yeah. So so we hope that we answered that question, and we will read more of the letter that he sent in with other questions in future episodes.
Great, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So the only other thing we need to do to close out this episode is we need to ask the trivia question that hints to next week's episode. So we have been, I don't mention it enough, but in this month, our theme has been American monsters, which is why we covered the American adaptation of Godzilla. And we covered Cloverfield. We're doing American monsters. So we are going to conclude American Monster August with the question: what giant monster film is referenced in the opening song of the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Now, if you don't know what the opening song is science fiction double feature. So
you can find that probably on, let's say, YouTube, Spotify. I know Spotify probably has the soundtrack on.
Oh yeah, because I listen to it all the time. I love the soundtrack for Rocky Horror Picture Show. It is a fantastic soundtrack. Anyway, so that's the question. So if you want to answer that question, even if you are incorrect, if you don't have the correct answer, you just want to give us a funny answer, you can do that by sending it to us at Kaiju Weekly on Twitter. You can do that on Instagram, Kaiju Weekly on Instagram. You can also email us, kaijuweekly@gmail.com, or you can look for the trivia question on the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group, because I will post it on there and you can answer it there. So we just want to say thank you to everyone for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at Kaiju Weekly and at Kaiju Groupie Pod. That's me and Michael. All the links to our other social medias that we mentioned are down in the description, as well as for the Kaiju Groupie Facebook. So you can go down into the description of this episode and see all of the links to our social medias. You can send questions, comments, or answers to trivia questions to our email, kaijuweekly@gmail.com. A big thank you to Alex, Shijir, and Thorax for supporting us on Patreon. You can also support us, the podcast, and us, and help our dreams come true of finally getting to go to Blobfest next year if it's being held and get to see the bucket of goo. I must see the goo. Somebody sent me in a message today, hashtag I must see the goo.
Well, at least someone's listening, Travis.
Yes,
Listening.
one of the 3 listeners sent me a message saying hashtag I must see the goo. And you can help me fulfill my dreams of seeing the goo. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go and listen to the Blob episode at patreon.com/kaijuweeklypod. And Michael, you want to say something?
I do, and Travis, you want to see the goo. Well, I have another request. I need you, the listener, to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And so basically what I'm asking you guys, if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy us and our illustrious voices, our luscious voices coming into your podcatcher each and every week, and you want this show in front of all of your friends and family who happen to love giant monster movies as much as the rest of us, please go on to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. We will accept nothing less. You can criticize us all you want in the actual comment, but at least make it 5 stars worth, and we will be sure to read that comment on a future episode.
If you enjoy listening to our voices on the podcast,
Well, do not make me break out this one, Travis.
oh man. Okay, we're gonna end the episode now because it's going off the rails. So to close out the episode, I'm going to say, help control the giant monster population. Have your Godzookies spayed or neutered.
Sayonara, guys.
Sayonara.